to A Joy to Be Me, a podcast sharing the magic of minerals, microbes, and a return back to nature's ways. Tune in to learn how to nourish yourself emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. It's time to reconnect with and deepen the fundamentals of human health so we can return to our wild state. I'm your host, Lydia Joy. Let's celebrate this wild ride we call the human experience. Welcome back to A Joy to Be Me and happy February. Wowzers. Did you guys know that this month marks the 5-year anniversary of this podcast? It does. And what a wild 5 years it has been. Oh my goodness. You guys feel me on this? It's like, navigating this whole post-COVID era has been wild. And many people are seeing it as a wake-up call to readjust their lifestyles and, really starting to better align with their true needs. So I think this is one of the silver linings of it all, right? Amidst all the challenge of it. Encouraging us to prioritize what matters, embrace a healthier, more mindful way of living, hopefully. It's really been inspiring to me to see many of my clients actually making pretty significant life changes and working on laying strong foundations for their health and well-being. I'm doing the same thing over here in a lot of ways, So cheers to everyone for these last 5 years. And thank you for being here with me the last 5 years as I've kind of navigated this podcast. And I'm excited this year to kick it up a notch. So I'll be sharing more about that in the next couple episodes with you. But recently a client asked for my insights on fasting, particularly the fasting like a girl movement, which I hadn't heard of or explored before. There's always something new out there to learn about, that's for sure. And, fasting isn't something I typically focus on. I do have many thoughts on the subject that I haven't shared publicly. For me personally, fasting has just kind of naturally integrated into my life. I don't use it as a way to like fix something per se, but as just this gradual organic ebb and flow and just finds its way in when it needs to kind of thing. I believe fasting honestly encompasses more than just food, in my opinion. And today I want to delve into that. Before I do, I want to share a little something about myself and the reason that I chose podcasting, which I do think ties into our topic. I think understanding ourselves, our strengths and weaknesses can be really helpful. It can illuminate a lot more for us when we really know who we are and what we're good at and what we need, right? It can illuminate the best healing paths for us, right? It can help us navigate excesses and misdirected focuses. So I'm really super passionate about learning, as I don't know if you can pick up on that. I'm really driven to share what I've discovered. For those of you who are into astrology, I want to share a little bit about my chart super quick. I have a Sagittarius rising, and a 9th house stellium with all 3 of my Virgo placements in the 9th house. So this combination really emphasizes the Virgo traits of organic health, attention to detail, analysis, organization, and the 9th house embodies philosophy and higher learning. I have my Virgo sun, which is our core personality, my Virgo Mars, which the Mars piece is our drive, and my Virgo Mercury. So my Mercury is in Virgo. So Mercury represents our communication, right? So this compels me to discuss topics of organic healing. Like I'm very driven to talk about it. And it's just like who I am. It's like I can't not do this. And so, I'm very much invested in this and really understanding and then, kind of philosophizing about it, like really sitting down and, you know, checking in on it, into it with questioning, and not just taking anything at like first glance or into dogma or anything like that. So I'm literally designed to do these things, right? Plus, with the Sagittarius rising piece, it's also my north node. So this is like my life's mission that I'm here to master. It's like I'm here to teach higher concepts. So it kind of makes me this like health philosopher mentor, if you will, right? So it also helps me, stay true to myself, quite frankly, now that I know this about myself and I spent the time, kind of learning a little bit more about astrology. So I love deep diving into learning. I often absorb a lot of information, especially if it's something I'm interested in, very quickly. However, we all have our limits, right? Even when we have strengths and things. Um, and so if I am tired or like a little bit more emotional stress is playing in the background, I find myself like not able to take in anymore, right? Like I start shutting down, and as soon as I notice that, I'm like, okay, cool. I've hit my capacity, right? And it's crucial to take those rests and breaks and abstain from consuming anymore, right? So that we can like reconnect with ourselves. I need to reconnect with my body more because, learning is like your face is in a book or on a screen, and like you're just like analyzing and, using your mind and your brain, right? So it's time to just like counter that with like just resting and getting into the body and, just kind of just not taking in anymore, right? Seems obvious, like when I say it out loud, I think. Um, but before embracing my gifts and my path, I struggled with this, right? Like look at the way the world is, right? And I think that's what is easy to do in today's world. It's like easy to max out our capacity for so many reasons, right? We have such a driven world, right? Um and we can do it even while engaging in what we love, right? So we can swing too far, we can overconsume, and we can burn ourselves out. So we're also incredibly bombarded with information. And not all information is, you know, good, right? Some of it's just like low quality, or there's an agenda behind it. I consider that being like kind of more toxic, like, like projected information, or information that's just not being very ethical or, you know, honest, right? There's just a lot of junk. Just like in the fast food industry, like there's fast food information, right? So, especially around health, right? Because look at the world. We've had a really convoluted health system this whole time that we've all been alive. So we have to kind of take that into consideration when we're consuming any health information. There is a lot of good stuff out there. You just have to always filter it for how someone's presenting it, right? Like just because they love it or people love it doesn't mean it's right for you, right? So I think it's important to keep that in mind, right? We have to get skilled at filtering what we take in, right? Get a filter or become the filter, right? Like that whole phrase. Otherwise, we risk absorbing more than we should. We then end up kind of holding on to it. We don't maybe realize it. It's in the back of our psyche somewhere, rolling around, like beating us up a bit. When really it's just not for us. Like we didn't need to eat, we didn't need to consume that. Kind of like those extra 2 cookies, right? Like you're like, shoot, I was only gonna have 1 and I had 3, right? It's kind of the same thing. We overconsume information, and then we have to deal with the side effects of that, right? So this is where fasting comes into play. It allows us to break down what's already in our system and manage excesses. And to find peace within ourselves, we often need to abstain from taking in more. We live in a society that's all about consumption. Um We have to produce because we have to consume. So I do see value in fasting from food. Personally, I believe we should eat during daylight hours and avoid eating after sundown. And when the sun is down, we fast. When the sun is up, we can eat, right? Like that's a really simplistic, straightforward way to look at it. And obviously that changes throughout the year, right? Um, but this aligns with our circadian rhythms, our circadian biology. And that it also, helps us eat seasonally a little bit to some degree, right? So when we eat seasonally, we can also help our bodies regulate in some powerful ways naturally. And, not a lot of people are talking about that. That said, fasting in our modern context really deserves thoughtful consideration and research. Um, a lot of people just jump into it and they do some crazy things and, you know, it doesn't always work so great. So, and then, just because a health expert is adamant about fasting, right? Like I've heard, you know, honestly some well-meaning teachers and such talk about fasting, right? Like they're like it's so obvious, the science is there, blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine that the science is there, but that doesn't mean it can translate into my life directly as the science states it. Like, there's a process for people, right? Like, people are at different places in their life, and the way that they approach this may or may not fit what the science says, okay? So, we have to remember that just because a health expert, has read all the science doesn't mean they're interested in sitting with you and helping you make it work in your life, right? So that's where you come in. You have to recognize, like, not every person teaching concepts knows every person's situation, right? You know it. So, and just because there's whole movements created around specific health topics, such as fasting, it doesn't mean you need to do it now, right? Like, so you hear these emphatic declarations of like, well, you have to fast. Like it doesn't like it's like a no-brainer or it's like a must or like, whatever the way it's being taught, right? Because I consult all the time with practitioners who are helping me learn more about the biome. And sometimes they make declarations about what the person has to do. And I'm like, okay, thank you for that information. And I just think we really have to get into the complexity and nuance. I've talked about this in the past. So we got to make sure that if fasting is something that makes sense for us, we approach it without this rigidity, without this like rigid, another way to do food that's rigid, like a diet, right? I think it's more about understanding how to incorporate fasting into a more optimal lifestyle. I think honestly, a lot of people need to rearrange their lifestyles, you know, um, first. And then, if that's not helping enough, then yeah, fasting, get in there and work your way towards some fasting. I don't personally use therapeutic fasting in my work right now because I've seen it become trendy in ways that can be harmful or problematic. I've noticed an increase in disordered eating and metabolic instability, which is why I hesitate to promote fasting as an initial or a primary or definitely not a long-term solution. Oh my goodness. So, I think many people need a lot of healing, a lot of nourishment, and to feel safe in their bodies before they can benefit from fasting as like a more natural practice that can be integrated well instead of like a desperate fix. Okay. And historically, our ancestors, we don't live in the same world as they did, but they didn't constantly restrict calories. They experienced cycles of abundance and scarcity. Now, modern life, we have constant availability of food and light, and that's disruptive to this natural rhythm. Um, we often approach diets without considering our circadian biology, and that's what I mean by the lifestyle piece. Like, kind of recalibrating a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more as you can to nature's rhythms outside of society's infrastructure, right? If you can do more of that, that's going to reset a lot of the things in your body that maybe are challenged and problematic that have you even considering the fasting in the first place. So, with that said, I believe in more of a gradual approach to fasting, not strict protocols. Um, it's very rare that I think that that would be necessary, but rather replacing old habits with new ones, right? So, like, the first step, quite frankly, could be, having these conversations around our conditioning, like abstaining from the things that we've been conditioned to think are accurate, right? Like, start with abstaining from being online all the time and reading everyone's opinions and letting their opinions like sway you. Right? So maybe a digital fast, if you will. Give yourself more time for silence and self-reflection than you realize you need. Like, it's so crucial. Our lives are increasingly digital and it is a part of our reality. So, I think there has to be acceptance around it, but like we really need to find ways to fast from it. This constant barrage of information, it totally affects our nervous systems, our brains, our physiology, our emotional health in ways that I don't think we totally realize, right? Considering this way of life has only been a few decades, I think people are starting to hit capacity, especially in the last 5 years of like the whole COVID era exacerbating this digital world that we are in, right? Like, so I feel that we need to fast from this form of excess even more so than food, in my opinion, because the messaging, guys, it isn't going anywhere. It's only going to increase um, as we go deeper and deeper into the digital virtual age. And you can have a conversation in your home about something and you'll see it blowing up on your phone in some kind of ad or some kind of targeted thing that you now see. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I like what I'm seeing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you go on Instagram and all of a sudden everything you see, you actually like it. You're like, whoa, I actually want to see this. But it's like going to the buffet and looking at all the food that's there and seeing all that food and being like, oh my God, I want to try it all. And next thing you know, you got 3 plates full and you're like, shit, I can't actually eat all this. If I do, I'll feel sick, right? This is what's happening, but it's like so much easier to consume than it is to consume the food, right? Am I right? Okay. So I want to recommend an audio book. I recently listened to it on a road trip. A friend recommended it. It's only about 2 hours. It's called The Voice of Silence. It's by Helena Blavsky, Blavtsky. If you're on a healing journey and you have turned your healing journey into a path of self-discovery as well, this is an excellent audiobook to check out. Her teachings on self-discipline are excellent and timeless, in my opinion. She wrote the book in the it's a late 1800s book. And when I listened to it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, it all just landed for me. It was really good. It was read by a male speaker, obviously, since Helena's no longer alive. And so I listened to it on YouTube in my car. It does have added interruptions if you don't have the paid account. So just want to FYI that it's still worth listening to. Maybe if you look for it somewhere else, you could find it ad free. I don't know, but still totally worth listening to. I don't know if you could find an actual copy of the book, but 2 hours, totally worth the time. I will probably listen to it again at some point, quite frankly. So yeah, some wonderful teachings in there. Highly, highly recommend. I think more of us need that kind of listening in our lives. So many of my clients, especially women, express anxiety about their health, right? They're often like turning to the online resources, right? They're like looking in the health forums, reading all the things. Like they know more about the trends and things going on out there than I do. And I'm like, hot damn, how do you all know all this? How do you have time to know all this stuff? Like it's too much. Right. And then the other thing is a lot of them are like, oh my God, I'm like up at late at night. I can't sleep. So I just go online and I like research stuff. And I'm like, uh-oh, that can't be good. Right? It only exacerbates the stress of it all, right? So I encourage us all to find strategies to reduce this situation in whatever ways you can. Guys, less is more. Less is more. Less is more. Less really is more. You got to be able to do something with all the things that you're consuming, right? Like we can't. We literally can't. We have houses full of clutter because the world makes so many products and we figure out ways to buy them. Right? Do you see where I'm going with this? So, I know that abstaining from technology entirely is not feasible for all of us, nor is it really the answer. I do think we can learn to use it less, use it more mindfully, like have some discipline around it, right? Um, I really think it's important. I mean, I remember a simpler time before smartphones and the internet dominated our lives. Um, my kids were very little and I was raising them without being able to talk to my bestie like every 2 seconds all day long, right? Like, or 5 besties, or like my whole family and my besties and the people that I'm serving online. You know what I'm saying? Um, it's a lot. And I believe many of us could benefit from reconnecting with that simplicity. Our nervous systems are not cut out for this much input, y'all. We're sitting here talking about nervous system regulation to the nth degree. And while it is needed, there's a lot of things that are just very simple that we could do to give ourselves all some support. So, how can we incorporate fasting in a beneficial way without falling into rigidity? Well, first, fasting, and I want to say something about really quick about fasting and hormesis, right? Hormesis, it's our body's ability to adapt to stress. I think we all do need more of that in these times, right? And this is a powerful way to look at fasting, if you will. Hormesis is going to just show us how we can grow stronger when we're exposed to various stressors, including when we limit our food intake. However, fasting from food isn't the only way to experience this, right? We can have other stresses like the way we do exercise, what the mental challenges that we undertake. These can also enhance our resilience as well. And then there's the whole cold and hot, like temperature, learning to tolerate different temperatures and putting ourselves into different temperature increases or decreases, to just kind of like stress our body out a little bit and build that resiliency within ourselves, right? So we know about those things, okay? Um, so I think that as we navigate modern living, um, we got to critically evaluate all our choices because it's so easy to just get sucked right back in to that big old machine, right? It's also just like really easy to prioritize comfort or get too comfortable, right? Like, and sometimes we just prioritize that over our health. Like we get into the whole ignorance is bliss world, right? But when we embrace this concept of fasting or hormesis, um, this is how we can like reclaim our strength and resilience, okay? So I I love that we have all this awareness around the nervous system. I just want to make sure we remember we are very resilient. I want us to make sure that we remember that even though there's all these things that are taxing our bodies and making us overwhelmed and feeling like whatever we feel, that could very easily swing into woe is me or potential victim mindset, right? We are not that at all. We are very resilient beings, and we have to remind ourselves of that. And one of the ways we can do it is, you know, give ourselves some boundaries, push some boundaries a little bit, challenge ourselves a little bit, right? Um, and there we can do that in all areas of our life. Okay. So I want to encourage us today to think about how we can each incorporate principles of fasting or abstinence or hormesis or resilience building, right? How can we incorporate some practices into our life right now, today? You're going to walk away from this with something. Okay. Um, and then, make sure it aligns with your current health goals. Like, let it be something that makes sense for you. Okay. So I just figured, hey, let me just come up with some in light of my 7 pillars that I've been talking about. These are the fundamentals of human health, the foundational pieces that we all got to work on, that have to be in place to build resilience in our health. So why not explore a few practices that are, fasting practices that align with that? Okay. So we've got the light piece, right? The sun and our light environment this helps us set up our whole circadian biology. Water, right? Air, and we can talk about breath, air and breath, movement, food, connections and relationships, and purpose. So those are the 7. So here, let's get in. I have a few personal examples, but then a couple just like more broad ones for everyone. So when we talk about light, sunlight and natural light versus artificial light. First off, please let's fast from the misconception that sunlight is harmful to your health. If you aren't there yet, um, please get there. It's so important. Thankfully more and more people are catching on to this, and more people are educating on this. So it's starting to show up more and more. So that's good. But we want to get that conditioning out of our systems entirely, okay? Um, and then if anything, to fast from artificial light. And if you can do it from sunset to sunrise, or at least titrate your way towards doing, avoiding less artificial light, like start somewhere and aim, find a goal and aim, like start to reduce exposure to artificial light from sunset to sunrise. Do it in a titrated way over time with the goal of reducing harm. And really, the light that goes into your eyes is a big deal. So that is a very simple one that many people can work with. And I think before making any dietary changes, I wouldn't even recommend fasting from food unless you've improved your light environment. Sunlight is our number one nutrient. It's foundational. And if you do decide to go into the fasting realm, just make sure whatever health expert you do rely on for fasting information implements this piece. Okay. It's really crucial. It's a big deal. Water. Well, let's abstain from tap water and let's abstain from bottled water. Okay. Let's fast from those forms of water. And by the way, water trumps food as well. We need water more than we need food. We can't live without water. We can live without food longer than we can live without water, right? So water's a big deal. So I think, if you haven't figured this out for yourself, that you have some changes to make, start there, right? I also want to say one thing. This is for everyone. This is for the sake of all of us. I would love to, and I've been doing this for a while and teaching my kids to do this, and um it's becoming easier for me because of how I structure my life, but abstain from using single-use plastic water bottles and drinks of any kind. I know this is, so if you start to really think about this, you're gonna be like, oh my God, holy moly, right? The reliance on plastic is not only negligent. At this point, we know this. Come on. It's also harmful. And now we're all like consuming around a credit card's worth of microplastics each week. Did you guys know that? If we collectively were to fast from plastic, it would benefit us all in light of that. And 80% of plastic water bottles are ending up in landfills. They're not getting recycled. And we're running out of landfills, by the way, guys. When we throw things away, away is not away from us. It's still the earth that we live in. So I would rather see land restored to flourishing ecosystems and food forests than have more freaking landfills. It's just insane. So if you're going to drink bottled water, guys, I get it. Sometimes we're in a pinch. Usually you can find it in glass somewhere. I mean, I don't know where you live in the world, but like the Wawa chain, there's a couple glass water bottle options. So if you're like running in to get gas and you're like, shoot, I forgot to bring my water, you should be able to find a glass bottle of water that is decent quality. And, that's just a good habit if you're not remembering to bring your own water with you. Just like let's also fast from the idea that convenience, such as buying plastic water bottles, is actually convenient. It's absolutely not. And then fast from taking showers in chlorinated water. I mean, really, basically, this is just saying get a shower filter, right? Like, not everyone has a whole house filter system, I'm aware. And some people have just their like drinking water filtration solution set in place. Um, so if you don't have a shower filter yet, get one, at least get something to get the chlorine out. At the very least, do something. It doesn't have to be perfect. Do something. We don't even need to shower every day either, right? So if you haven't done it yet, like maybe just start showering a little less, right? It's such a modern thing that we shower every freaking day. But there's a lot of good shower filters out there that do way better. I think the one from oh my goodness, I forgot the name of the company. I'll put a link in the show notes, but there's one that's like $60 and it's like really, really good. It does more than chlorine. So it's not that expensive to get started, and it's going to save you in putting excess things into your system that are creating some of the havoc in your body, to your blood sugar, to your nervous system, to maybe even like holding on some weight or whatever it is that might have you considering a food fast in the first place, right? So like this could be a piece that if it were handled would take the burden off of you, and maybe you wouldn't feel so compelled to do some kind of a more serious food fasting. I don't know. Just a thought. All right. Now we get into air and breathing. I'm going to talk, just keep this one really short. I will be talking about this in a more deep way in a podcast in the future, but I think one thing that we all could stand to pay attention to is fast from holding our breath, from really shallow breathing, and mouth breathing. All right, so I trained myself out of mouth breathing at night without mouth tape back in, I don't remember what year it was. I think it was like 2009 or something. I don't know. I learned about it back then and I realized it was causing me all kinds of problems. I couldn't sleep well. I was always getting congested. I was very anxious. And I taught myself how to do this. So, mouth breathing at night, if you don't know if you're doing it, it's worth figuring this out. And start to figure out a way to practice breathing through your nose, okay? Now, a lot of people need the tape, right? You can get mouth tape and you can use the mouth tape as training wheels for a bit and then try again without it. This would be like my first recommendation for everyone to do. And then, I don't know, find a couple key points in your day maybe when you shift from one place to another and you settle in, like say, for example, you're getting into the car and you're going to go drive for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever. Um, Maybe that's the time to really quick check in for a second and, you know, get yourself sitting well in your car and, check in with your breath. When you sit down at your desk to start working, check in with your breath. When you sit down to eat your food, check in, right? Like if you are feeling like amped up and like you're just like a little bit more rapid, that's an opportunity to check in. So abstain from that fast, rapid breathing when you're stressed, right? Notice when you do it. Like give yourself a little homework and say, all right, tomorrow I'm gonna pay attention to when I get stressed and if I start, breathing a little faster. And then just tell yourself to pause and slow down and, practice like it's just a simple breathing. Inhale for 8, exhale for 8. Try to breathe at 4 breaths per minute for 4 minutes to calm your nervous system. That's just one way you could try it, right? I've had so many people teach me so many cool ways to practice this. Like there's this one where you trace up and down your whole hand and you do with one finger, like you take your finger up your pinky down, up your next finger down, and then that's when you're inhaling and then you go back and you're exhaling. That's another little tip, if that made sense to you. Okay. Movement. Oh man. I mean, this one's a big one. I want to just say like, how about we all abstain from prolonged sitting and slouching? Oh my goodness, right? So like you could check in the same thing with the breath throughout the day and check in, where are you at with movement? Like, all right, let me make sure I'm breathing right. Okay, wait, have I moved enough today? Have I been sitting here slouching? Am I like getting too like slunken down into my chair? Right? Like abstain from that. Like commit to it. Prioritize the movement and the good posture, right? So you can find very, very simple things, like find a couple of new structural movements that actually train your body to hold your frame better, as well as breathe better. So I was like 2 for 1 here, right? And then just like abstain from the 1 or 2 things that you notice you do a lot. Like maybe you lean over more than you should when you could be standing up tall and straight. Like maybe you really slouch down in your chair, or like you cross your legs all the time, or instead of like walking more, you sit more. Like you just choose it, right? Like how can you, instead of sitting on the couch for 2 hours at the end of the day, like do you have to sit on the couch? Like could you get up and like, sit in a squat or like do some different kinds of movements? I mean, we have all these chairs around us all the time and we tend to just go and sit in them. But do we have to? Could we move around the house? Could we hang out in the living room talking to each other and sit in a squat or do some movement together, right? So, abstain from that, right? Like just choose to abstain and choose to fill what you were doing with something else. And honestly, I think that this is one of the things that I think that this does for us is improve our confidence. When we hold our bodies better, when we hold our frame with more structure, we have more confidence. And I just think a lot of people don't know how to move their body from the ground up in a fully functional, foundational way, in large part because we've all been quite the sitting society. So there's plenty here to abstain from and work with. Plenty in this one. So I hope you've got your motors running over there. Obviously, food, I would say to align with a more, circadian biology, ancestral eating patterns, consider having like fasting days where you maybe fast from something you overconsume. Maybe like you drink way too much coffee. Pick a day, like just challenge yourself to fast from it. Or maybe you eat the same 10 things over and over. Like, give yourself a challenge there. But one thing I would say we all could stand to do is, have a day where you are fasting from everything but like maybe plant food. So like have a plant food only day. This isn't about becoming a vegetarian or vegan or anything like that. I'm not even going there at all. What I am saying is, our ancestors pre-industry, when we were hunters and gatherers and we didn't have factory farmed everything, they sometimes relied only on what they could forage, right? When hunting was either unsuccessful, which, they didn't always come home with a score, right? They didn't always have it saved or whatever. So we now can have anything we want whenever we want to the nth degree from all over the globe. So we've swung way too far in the other direction. And especially in our consumption of animal protein, meat. I'm definitely going to be talking about this more this year because I think the pendulum has swung way too far and we're overdoing it. But we all really do need more plants, and we need them for our microbiome because our gut microbes, that's what they want to eat. I did a whole podcast episode on this, right? So you can go back and check out the one on fiber. But that is just an idea for you. You don't have to take my idea, but I'm trying to back up my reason for my idea. Just think about what I'm sharing here and see if something lands for you. But I do think the whole, I think there's a thing where people do I don't know, vegetarian dinner a couple nights a week or something like that. So maybe instead of eating meat for dinner every single night, you pick 2 nights a week or something like that and start there. If you're eating animal protein every single solitary meal all the time and you're not getting a lot of plants, that could be a nice little simple shift for you. And then the obvious one would be to fast from all the cheap ultra processed foods, fast from eating in a rush state, stress state, right? It's not just about fasting from food, but abstaining from the rush, the hurriedness. How are you showing up to the table when you approach your meals? All right. And then connections, all our connections, right? And social connections. I think many people eat out of boredom, right? Or social habit rather than genuine hunger. It's common to eat what's available at social gatherings simply to fit in, or, maybe due to peer pressure, because people do this whole thing where they literally twist your freaking arm to eat shit you don't want to eat. It's so annoying. Why do we do that? If we do this, we got to check in with ourselves about it. But you know what I'm saying? I, we enjoy sharing things together. I think that's a big piece of it, but we also do pressure each other greatly. Right. So over the years, I've had women hesitate to start coaching with me because they literally fear that their partners might totally sabotage their efforts when it comes to food. And some of them are like, I'm not going to do it unless he does it too. Right? It's that big of a deal. So, I think every one of us could come up with ways to abstain and really hold a boundary here. I was able to witness this in my community when we had the potlucks every week. We had a couple people really struggle with this boundary, wanting everyone to eat a certain strict way for their, you know, dietary regulations. And it's well, just regulate yourself, and some people were really great at, and they were just tonight I'm abstaining, I just need to take a night off and I'm just gonna, enjoy the company. Right. So I think we can all figure out ways that we can really hold a strong boundary and abstain when we know we need to. That kind of fasting, more of that, please. Right. And I think fasting as a reaction to overindulgence, though, I wanna say one thing about that. Like, so, some of us might choose to fast because we've overindulged. This isn't sustainable. This isn't a sustainable strategy, right? Like, it's like, "Oh my god, I overindulged for 3 months, and now I'm just like, I'm gonna do a whole fast." Right? And if you notice you're doing that all the time, like, that's not a sustainable strategy, right? You can cultivate discipline over time. Um, you can. If this is challenging for you, it may be a signal to work on your boundaries. So, just because food is present doesn't mean you need to partake. We are social creatures. We can still honor our individual selves and needs and choose differently than everyone around us, even when they do not. And lastly, I want to cover purpose. I think one of the best things we all can do is fast from societal expectations that dictate who we should be, right? Let go of all the conditioning that obscures your true self. I call this deconditioning, to recondition yourself to embody the joy of being you. And guys, it's taken me my whole life to do this. And it's why I shared a bit at the beginning about embodying my unique traits and sharing that little bit about my astrology chart, right? Um we often hear this whole thing like we can have it all, right? But too often this really comes at the expense of our health and well-being. And I think many people are beginning to realize that what we truly seek is inner peace and a sense of harmony within ourselves. The world hasn't told us that. The world has told us everything else other than that, right? So, in a world overflowing with all these distractions of all kinds of things, right? It's really crucial to prioritize our health and reconnect with what truly matters. There's a lot of clearing we can do. We can clear so many types of things. Like, we can call it fasting from all the clutter in our lives, right? Like, clear the physical, emotional clutter. This is like a really powerful way to create more space in your life for flow, right? For harmony. So just as some people find value in mindful fasting, not necessarily as like a whole way of life, that way of eating, right? But like a more mindful fasting with intention. I really encourage you to create your own version of this today. So take at least one small action inspired by this episode, please. It would make me so happy. It's not about me though. It's about you. I want you to have the experience of the benefits, okay? So if you have been struggling with chronic health issues, you've had a long-term history of like poor sleep, low energy, all kinds of digestive problems. I don't know, your hormones are challenged, you've got cycle related issues, you don't have a lot of reserve, you get stressed out really easily all the time, your moods are swinging all over the place. Um, and you want to explore working together to find more personalized solutions. um, I'm going to invite you to book a discovery call, okay? Many people are just like feeling so overwhelmed by all the different health trends and the endless information. And a lot of people are doing some really good things, but like doing a lot of things they don't need to. And then they just become unsure of the right steps to take. And I think it's important to like identify your unique imbalances. Like, where are you now? Like, where's your body at now? Like, what's really going on under the hood, so to speak, right? Because that really helps you create a clearer path forward where you aren't doing all kinds of guessing or like searching on the internet, trying all these different things that people are suggesting, right? Like, there's so many. You would be you could be trying so many things forever, right? Um, and they maybe don't resonate with your needs right now because they're just not meeting what's going on, right? Usually after a first session, many clients express like a newfound clarity about their health journey. Like, they feel a lot of relief. They're like, oh my goodness, you just validated this and you helped me see this, right? And I think that that's what can be incredibly helpful for many people, is to get out of that world of like trying to find all kinds of resources, and just really abstaining from all the things that might not work and finding what will. So if you've, tuned in and you feel like my approach really resonates with you, please book a discovery call. The link is in the show notes for you. If you're very interested in getting the support that you need to work on your health challenges, like we'll talk about them together. We'll determine if we really can work on this together. If we can be a good fit together, right? There's no pressure to sign up. This call is really genuinely for those who are interested in making deep changes in their life that they haven't been able to figure out on their own. So if you want to take that step towards reclaiming your well-being, I totally look forward to connecting with you. Again, link is in the show notes. You can book a discovery call. It's totally free. I hope you guys found this episode helpful. I enjoyed putting it together. I'm glad my client asked me that question. So, and I hope you'll take one action. If you want to tell me what it is, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me, you can hit me up on Instagram. But until then, or next time, I hope you guys all stay